It's time for the NFL Conference Championships, and I want to break down every single thing you need to know about all four teams participating this weekend. Now, after some tough games last week, we've come down to the final four of Eagles, 49ers, Bengals, and Chiefs, and there's so much to talk about in this, so I want to break it all down for you, who you should be rooting for, and the reasons why. Now, if you enjoy this content, please like and subscribe. It truly means the world to me, but let's not waste any more of your guys' time. Let's go and get right into things. Now, it is the final round of the playoffs before we approach the Super Bowl. It is time for the teams to finally punch their ticket into the Super Bowl and potentially bring their first Super Bowl or start building on a dynasty. So, we have these four teams and so much to talk about in the AFC and the NFC. So how we're going to be doing this is we're going to be going through both sides, NFC, of course, the Eagles and 49ers, and the AFC, Chiefs and Bengals. And we're going to be going through the rankings from the regular season as well as combining, how they've done in the playoffs and compare the two teams side by side, talking offense, talking defense, passing, rushing, turnovers, every single thing like that, and break it all down for you into chunks so you can understand and choose who you'd like to win, as well as at the bottom here talking about who I am leaning towards a little bit. Now, of course, make your assumptions and decisions as you will, but I'm going to give you a little bit of my own insight into how this is going to play out. So let's go through these pieces. Now, first, the early game on Sunday at 2 p.m. is going to be the Philadelphia Eagles versus the San Francisco 49ers. Both these teams have done really, really well through the regular season, with the Eagles being 14-3 and the 49ers at 13-4. These teams were amongst the top for a good long while of this NFL season and were even at times considered to be the most likely winners of this Super Bowl. Now, both these teams have been dominant all year from offense and some of the best defense in the entire league. And this game could truly go either way. Eagles or 49ers could win, and I wouldn't be surprised. It could be a massive shootout. I'm talking 40 points each team, or we could be talking about like 13 points each. I wouldn't be surprised at any of these potential outcomes. But let's look at some of the stats and explain kind of how this game could play out and what's important. So we're going to be talking the offense, of course, breaking down individual stats, defense, individual stats, and the first number will be the Eagles, the second number will be the 49ers. So I think you're going to understand once we go into things. Let's start first with the overall offense. Now, these numbers are all based on the regular season because it's a little bit hard to, analyze in the playoffs because, of course, Eagles and the Chiefs skipped a game here, so you don't have as much information to gather. So I based on the regular season because equal number of games, unless you're the Bengals. But nonetheless, let's start with overall offense. Eagles are the third, and the 49ers are the fifth. Now, I will say these numbers are super, super close. I mean, two difference. But if Christian McCaffrey's on this 49ers team for a good portion of the year, and Jalen Hurts is on this for the whole year, not injured, I could have seen these guys go first and second. Honestly, these offenses are incredible, especially when you're talking at full health and at full potential. There's so much talent on this offense. Points per game, third for the Eagles, sixth for the 49ers. Passing yards is eighth for the Eagles. Of course, Jalen Hurts did really, really well. And passing yards for the 49ers, though, is 13th. Now, for the 49ers, it's a passing game really, really hit or miss. You went through three quarterbacks this year, and although Brock Purdy has been doing great and is undefeated at this current moment, definitely outplaying the mystery relevant expectations, it's really hard to get a whole grasp on everything that's going on because you had Jimmy Garoppolo, Trey Lance, and Brock Purdy all be starters for portions of this year, so it's really hard to look at that as a broad spectrum, but they do rank 13th in passing yards. And for passing touchdowns, the Eagles are 7th and the 49ers are 15th. So the Eagles definitely have, a big-time heads up on total stats for passing, but I also think that they still currently do. Jalen Hurts is definitely miles above, Brock Purdy, and that's nothing against him. He's been playing great, and honestly, deserves to be in this spot for how he's been playing. He has had help from the rushing game and the defense, but he's played very, very well. But I think Jalen Hurts and this Eagles, offense with, A.J. Brown and plenty of options, this incredible offensive line, I think they do have the upper hand in the passing side of things. For rushing yards, the Eagles are 5th, 49ers are 7th, and rushing touchdowns, Eagles are 1st, and 49ers are 5th. Now, again, I think this could have played a lot different if Christian McCaffrey was with the 49ers the whole year. So I'm going to lean towards the 49ers. Going against the stats here, I think the 49ers do have the better rushing game. Now, that comes with, of course, they do have a really good passing game with, Deebo Samuel, George Kittle. I mean, even Christian McCaffrey is great out of the backfield. But both Deebo and especially Kittle are very good in the run game, and the offensive line's put together pretty well to work through it. And Christian McCaffrey can get you yards when there's absolutely looks like there's none available. I'm going to lean a little bit towards a better rushing game for the 49ers. So 1-1 in the offense. Pretty good setup there. And for total touchdowns, you have the Eagles 2nd and 49ers 6th. This offense is, almost deadlocked for how good both these offenses are. And for the defense, it, doesn't get much better. It's deadlocked once again. Total defense, the Eagles are 2nd and the 49ers are 1st. Super, super close. Now, some of these stats, though, for the 49ers being 1st and the Eagles being 2nd, a little bit surprising where you see some of these numbers fall to. Points per game, Eagles are going to be 8th, which I think is really important there. They allow a little bit more points than you would expect from the second-ranked defense. But the 49ers are 1st. They don't allow a whole lot of points, and that could be an important factor in this. Now, for passing yards allowed, remember, of course, a better number means less total allowed. A better number means that you're better, obviously. Passing yards, Eagles are 1st, and the 49ers are 21st. Tough drop off there. Now, passing touchdowns, on the other hand, Eagles are 12th, and the 49ers are 7th. A little bit weird how those kind of flip-flopped here, but I definitely got to lean towards this Eagles passing defense being better as a whole, but also having a little bit easier an opportunity. Not only do they have the better passing defense, allowing less yards and a little bit more passing touchdowns, but going against Brock Purdy versus going against Jalen Hurts, and you have the 21st ranked passing defense, that is a big discrepancy. A very, very important factor in how these things could play out. And I think Hurts and, A.J. Brown and all those guys could have a really, really big game if the 49ers are able to work some things out. Now, for rushing yards, you have the Eagles at 16th and 49ers at 2nd. Rushing touchdowns, 18th for the Eagles and 9th for the 49ers. So, by far, no questions asked, 49ers have a better rushing defense. And although the Eagles, I think they had a top 5 rusher, if I do remember correctly. I am blanking on his name. I am terribly sorry to all Eagles fans, and just in general, I should know that. But, the fact that the 49ers have that big of a gap is going to force the Eagles to probably lean a little bit more on that passing game. And although they do have an option here with the 49ers being 21st ranked, because you're so good on the rush defense, you might be able to, lean into the passing defense a little bit more and take a little bit more risks to cover some of these options that could take away from the Eagles total. And for turnover differential, we're going to have 3rd for the Eagles and 1st for the 49ers. 49ers are great at, forcing turnovers and limiting how many. Of course, the Eagles are as well, but 49ers have a little bit of upper hand there. So, it's really hard here. The Eagles do have a slight edge when you look at most of these statistics, but based on pure performance and you look at the rosters, it almost looks like the 49ers might have this slight edge up as well. I mean, these numbers are so close, and you look at the rosters, and the rosters are so close. This, like I said, this game could go really either way, and it's a hard game to pick. The 49ers offense, talent-wise, is just so incredible, and I think they could have jumped to, right there, 3rd or 2nd, right next to the 49ers if Christian McCaffrey was with the team the whole time and Kittle was not missing time. But, on the other hand, the Eagles have been so consistent all year, especially when Jalen Hurts was in, offensively and defensively. They were so good for so long. And based on the stats alone, you might want to lean towards the Eagles. But for some reason, my gut is telling me the 49ers. Now, I'm going off script here. Of course, I had all my numbers over here, so you saw me glancing. But I'm going to say 49ers here. Now, if you go against me, that's perfectly fine. I could definitely see the Eagles coming out on top. But there's something telling me the 49ers are going to come out with a win. Whether that's Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, and all these options, Brendan Ayuk, all these options on offense. Even with, Brock Purdy, who has been playing great, but not a top elite quarterback. Even without an elite quarterback, that offense is just too good to not be able to put some points up on this Eagles defense, even though the Eagles defense has been great. That alongside the fact that 49ers are the number 1 ranked defense, even though the Eagles have a huge gap from passing offense versus 49ers passing defense, I think they're going to be able to even it out a little bit with that rushing defense for the 49ers, limiting the Eagles' opportunities, might be able to lean into that pass game. There's something inside telling me that the 49ers will come out on top, but it's going to be a close game. And I could see this coming down to, the last couple minutes of the game. Maybe it's not a one-possession game as you just barely extend it over that. You hit that 9, go for 2. I could see somebody going for 2 to make it 9 points or something, something weird like that going on. But it's going to be real close. I mean, we're talking 1 possession, 2 possession. We're talking the final 5 minutes. You're going to be on the edge of your seat. This could go either way. Now, next up at 5:30, we're going to see the Chiefs and the Bengals face off. Now, the Chiefs at 13-4 and the Bengals at 12-4, of course. One less game due to the everything that happened with the Bills game. Happy that things are kind of working out for DeMar there. Very, very good to see that he's back on track here. Looks like he's getting healthy. That's great to see. But nonetheless, there honestly is a lot, even outside of the stats and numbers, that are kind of weighing in the balance of this game. Joe Burrow is undefeated against the Chiefs, going 3-0, and that could really lean both ways. Normally, you see that 3-0. It means the Bengals and Joe Burrow, who are pretty much attached to the hip. When you say Bengals, you're thinking of Joe Burrow. That, 3-0 could tell you that they have the number of the Chiefs and they're likely to win this. But on the other side of things, the Chiefs are constantly winning games they're not expected to. And that could be enough of motivation to push them over the edge to go and fight even harder than they normally would in this situation against the Bengals, where the Chiefs could win. A lot hanging in the balance. And not only that, but Mahomes, who seemingly likely is the MVP, if he can move to the Super Bowl and win it, he could start getting propelled really quickly into that GOAT conversation. Now, I don't think he's close to taking away from Tom Brady, not by any means. But, I mean, you get another MVP and you make it to the Super Bowl and potentially win it, you're inching closer and closer to being that talk, and he's still really, really young. Now, on the other side of things, if you see Joe Burrow go and win it again and make it to the Super Bowl again, whether he wins or not, maybe Patrick Mahomes' name starts to, come down a little bit, and he's not this almighty that everyone seemingly starts to look at him at the past few years. There's a lot that's going on behind the scenes this game. Now, these two teams have, so much talent on both sides of the ball, especially offensively for both these teams. So much talent. Now, let's first look at the offense of both these teams. Now, of course, the Chiefs will be your first number and the Bengals will be your second number, just so everything's completely understandable. Offense first. Overall offense, the Chiefs are number 1 in the entire league. This Chiefs offense has been insane all year, and that's all due to Patrick Mahomes. Even with Tyreek Hill now gone, they managed to be the number 1 offense in the entire league. The Bengals, a decent gap behind, but not too far behind, or 8th for overall offense. Points per game, Chiefs first, Bengals 7th. Now, passing yards and, passing game in general, for the Chiefs, passing yards is first, Bengals 6th. Passing touchdowns for the Chiefs is first, and the Bengals are second. They've done a really good job at getting touchdowns, even though they don't have to lean so heavily on the passing game throughout the whole field. Of course, Joe Mixon is a very solid, if not elite, running back, so you don't have to constantly pass the ball, where I feel like the Chiefs have to lean on a little bit more. So overall passing, got to give the upper hand to the Chiefs. I don't think there's any question about that. I mean, first, all the way through passing offense, your first and everything. No doubt that the Chiefs are better passing, and I think Patrick Mahomes is better than Joe Burrow. Shouldn't be too many questions about that. I'm sure if, Joe wins this or Patrick Mahomes wins this, whoever wins this is, for a couple weeks here going to be labeled as the best out of the two. But at least in this scenario, I think the Chiefs have the heads up in the passing offense. Now for rushing yards, Chiefs are 20th and Bengals are 29th. That seems odd. That seems wrong, but we'll continue. Rushing touchdowns 8th versus 20th. So seemingly by the stats, if these are correct, and I sure hope they are, it seems like the Chiefs once again do have a little bit of a heads up on the rushing game. But I think Joe Mixon brings a lot to this Bengals offense where I'm willing to call this a tie. I think the Chiefs have done a really, really good job with the run game and being smart about when they're using it, and that's enough to get them their good yards here. But Joe Mixon could explode at any point for this Bengals offense. I think that's enough for me to say that this breaks even. I mean, neither of these guys are top rushing offenses, so I'm going to say this about breaks even. Maybe you can lean towards the Chiefs if you're a stats guy, or if you're on field looking at player by player, maybe lean towards the Bengals and Joe Mixon. That's up to you. I'm going to say they break even right here. And for total touchdown, Chiefs are first, Bengals are 8th. So I'd say for the most part, Chiefs definitely dominate on the offense side of things. Now overall defense, we're going to be talking Chiefs 11th and Bengals 16th. Pretty decent gap there once again. Points per game, Chiefs 16th, Bengals 6th. So the Bengals do a really, really good job at not allowing a ton of points per game, even if they're allowing a good chunk of yards and total overall defense. They do a good job at not allowing so many points per game. Passing yards, we're going to have 19th for the Chiefs, 16th for the Bengals. Passing touchdowns, 32nd for the Chiefs, which is just a huge, huge number right there. And 3rd for the Bengals. The fact that the Chiefs are 32nd in passing touchdowns, kind of says a lot. Now it does, of course, we're going to notice in a second here, they do have a really solid, if not good, great level rushing defense. And that's going to force you to pass the ball a little bit more against the Chiefs in the red zone and in general, which is going to lead to more passing touchdowns. But 32nd is just a massive, massive difference. So you have to give the lead to the Bengals in this passing defense scenario. For rushing yards, Chiefs 8th, and then Bengals are 5th. Rushing touchdowns, Chiefs 7th, and Bengals are 12th. Now, once again, pretty close here. Bengals have the heads up in yards allowed, but Chiefs have it in touchdowns. Now, it's really hard to grade rushing touchdowns because a lot of these do come within like 2 or 3 yards of the end zone where you're just pushing it in and pounding it in. So it's really hard to judge how everything's kind of going to play out here. I will give the lean to the Bengals a little bit here just because yards, I think in the rushing scheme, unless you're looking at like 20-plus yard runs, I think yards is a little bit more important than rushing touchdowns because when you're within like 2 or 3 yards and you're rushing the ball, you got 3 downs, the likelihood of stopping that all 3 downs, consistency is not very high. So I think I'm going to give the lean towards the Bengals have a better rushing defense, which would mean the Bengals have a better overall defense. And that kind of matches with the Chiefs having the better overall offense. For turnover differential, though, I think this is going to come into play a lot. Chiefs 23rd, they're -3, and Bengals 6th. So the Chiefs turn over the ball a decent chunk and are not they're unable to get those balls back in return, forcing their own turnovers, where the Bengals are really good at forcing turnovers and keeping the ball in their own hands. Now this game has a lot of external implications, of course. Burrow versus, Mahomes. I mean, if Burrow goes up 4-0, that's going to say a lot about how the Bengals have done against the Chiefs and all that. But if Mahomes can break that, that's going to, become a real rivalry. I think you can't label something a rivalry until both guys have won. That becomes a real rivalry. There's a lot sitting behind this, but with that being said, this is going to be a big-time offensive game. Even if the Chiefs do have the upper hand with, of course, Mahomes and Kelsey, and a lot of guys have stepped up this year. And the Bengals with Joe Burrow, Joe Mixon, Jamar Chase. Wow, I blanked on that a little bit. T. Higgins. you got a lot of options here on both sides on the offense. This, I'm leaning towards being a little bit more of a shootout than a low-scoring event. I just don't see a world where this ends up being like 13-17, 20-17, something like that. I think both teams have to be at least above or at that 24 mark for this game. But, the Chiefs by far have a massive hand up on the offense, and the Bengals have a little bit of a hand up on defense. There's a lot kind of hanging in the balance here, but I do have to lean towards the fact, and I think, it's really important, the 3-0 mark. Bengals versus Chiefs, since Joe Burrow's been drafted, they've beat them 3 times. Every single time they faced, the Bengals have won. I think that kind of does say a lot. Now, Andy Reid, of course, is an incredible, incredible coach. And if anyone's going to figure out how to beat a team that they have not been able to beat, it's going to be a guy like Andy Reid. But I think it does really say a lot. So, this one I think is almost harder to pick than the Eagles and 49ers game, because those guys were so close that it doesn't feel like there's a wrong answer here, but these guys almost perfectly match each other, defense versus offense, match each other really, really well, and this could just, there's so many things that could occur in this game here. I am going to lean towards the Bengals here, and I think a big factor in me leaning towards the Bengals is that 3-0 mark. And I won't be surprised if the Chiefs are able to break this, but I'm leaning towards the Bengal because that 3-0, and them turning into 4-0 could be a big mark in the future of, Patrick Mahomes versus Joe Burrow talk. There's just something about streaks. Once you get on a good one, it's really, really hard to break it. I mean, coming from a Chargers fan, obviously behind me, maybe there's some bias against Chiefs fans, but Chiefs, for a long time, I think it was like 4 years in a row or something like that, where the Chiefs won every single game for like 4 years straight, and it was so hard to break that. Every single game was close, and the Chargers weren't able to break that seal and break that streak. And we see that in a lot of sports, a lot of teams. Once a streak gets going, it's really hard to break it. I think 3-0, moving on to 4-0 could be a thing here. I'm going to choose the Bengals in that scenario. It's a lot to go off of. Now, in total, the playoffs are nearing the end. And although it's been super exciting and I'd love to see this go on forever, it just can't. And it's time for these teams, these Final Four, to decide in a game who's going to be punching their ticket into the Super Bowl and who's going to be going to Cancun. Now, with so much hanging in the balance, on the field and off the field, it's going to be a very eventful weekend, and I'm sure I'm going to make a video on my reactions and my thoughts afterwards and preparation for the Super Bowl. But this was a great year of football, and I'm excited to see this go down. Who do you guys think is going to win? Why do you think they're going to win? Are you going to choose Eagles or the 49ers? And are you going to choose Chiefs or the Bengals? Who's going to be facing off in the Super Bowl? Comment that all down below. If you enjoyed this content, please like and subscribe. It truly means the world to me. And as always, I hope it's awesome today. Hope it made you smile. Hope it made you laugh. Something really important to me. Affects most of the day in a great way. And as always, you guys all be safe out there.